Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. China has urged the Philippines to withdraw the United States Typhoon intermediate range missile, the Defense Ministry said, accusing the Southeast Asian nation of breaking its promises by introducing the missile system.
Marcos is that if the People's Republic of China will stop its illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive actions in the West Philippine Sea, then he offered PRC a deal that the president would then remove the Typhoon missile systems immediately from Philippine soil.
German prosecutors are now treating the case of a man who drove a car into a crowd in Munich on Thursday as a murder attempt. At least 36 people were injured, some of them seriously. Security was high in Munich as the Munich Security Conference started today with some 5,000 officers deployed. A devastating fire at a resort construction site in Busan, South Korea has claimed the lives of at least 6 individuals, according to local fire officials. And the news starts now. China has urged the Philippines to withdraw the United States Typhoon intermediate range missile, the Defense Ministry said, accusing the Southeast Asian nation of breaking its promises by introducing the missile system. Now, the system is part of a U.S. drive to amass a variety of anti-ship weapons in Asia. The weapon drew sharp criticism from China when first deployed in April 2024 during a training exercise. The Philippines was not only giving up its own security and national defense to others, but also introducing the risks of geopolitical confrontation and arms race into the region, that according to Zhang Zhaogang, a spokesman for the Chinese Defense Ministry. The missile system is a strategic offensive weapon, and the Philippine side had repeatedly broken its promises and catered to the U.S. side in introducing this system, he added. Now, the comments came as Jonathan Malaya, a spokesperson for the Philippine National Security Council, told the press conference that the Typhoon missile was only meant for defense and that the Philippines had never promised to withdraw the Typhoon missile.
Marcos is that if the People's Republic of China will stop its illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive actions in the West Philippine Sea, then he offered PRC a deal that the president would then remove the Typhoon missile systems immediately from Philippine soil.
German prosecutors are now treating the case of a man who drove a car into a crowd in Munich on Thursday as a murder attempt.
He has admitted that he deliberately drove into the participants of the demonstration. He gave a reason for this, which I would summarize as religious motivation. I can't quote from the interrogation of the accused here, I'm sure you understand that. But what he said about it suggests a religious motivation for the offense.
Lässt auf eine religiöse Tatmotivation schließen.
We also found a chat in which he presumably spoke to a relative and said goodbye with the words, "Maybe I won't be around tomorrow."
At least 36 people were injured, some of them seriously, as a result of the incident, according to the statement. Security was high in Munich as the Munich Security Conference started today with some 5,000 officers deployed around the Bavarian capital, according to police. The top-level security conference will be attended, among others, by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. At the Munich Security Conference, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance issued a stern warning to Russia, stating that Washington is prepared to impose further sanctions and consider military action if Moscow fails to negotiate a peace deal with Ukraine that ensures its long-term independence. Now, Vance emphasized that there are economic tools of leverage. There are, of course, military tools of leverage that the U.S. could employ against President Vladimir Putin. Vance is scheduled to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during this conference. And this meeting follows President Donald Trump's recent announcement of initiating talks with Putin to end the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, a move that has raised concerns among European allies about the potential implications for regional security. Additionally, Vance reiterated the U.S. administration's call for European nations to increase their defense spending, aligning with President Trump's long-standing demand for NATO allies to take on a greater share of defense responsibilities.
I wanted, given the attacks yesterday, to offer my condolences from my wife and I. Munich is a beautiful city that we've actually visited before, both on work but also on vacation. So very, very sad for what's happened, and wish everybody the best as you guys recover and try to care for the victims and their families. And we'll have, I think, a good conversation about how to move the relationship forward and cooperate on some areas of shared interest. As you all know, one of the things that the President and I really believe is that Europe is, of course, a very important ally for the United States. We also think it's really important to recognize that in the future, we think Europe is going to have to take a bigger role in its own security, and obviously Germany, being the biggest economy in Europe, is going to have a major role to play there, and so I'm sure we'll talk about that as well.
Thanks for your condolences. Just returning from the place where the attack was taking place yesterday. Indeed, there is a need for an exchange. We are opening a new chapter in our transatlantic and our German-American relations. I experience now 25 years of these relations intensive relations between Germany and the United States of America.
Kiev and its European allies have demanded that they may be included in any peace negotiations after U.S. President Donald Trump spoke by phone with Russia's Vladimir Putin. During the call, Trump seemed to agree that Ukraine could neither have all of its land back nor join NATO. Now, Trump's talk with Putin has set off alarms in Europe and left Ukraine wondering whether the U.S. has surrendered on its behalf. Thomas Eyelikeness for more.
Donald Trump likes to portray himself as the great deal maker, the uber negotiator. But following his phone call with Putin about settling the Russia-Ukraine war, it looks like he walked away with nothing. Armida Van Roo, an analyst with the British think tank Chatham House, says following that conversation, things aren't looking good for Ukraine.
The fact that Trump seemingly gave everything away and Putin got everything he wanted is not a good sign for things to come. The other question, of course, is what does this actually look like? And that's where I think the distinction between a ceasefire and a peace deal is important, because a ceasefire means that Ukraine could hold on to its territorial integrity, whereas a peace deal on current lines would mean along the current front lines, would mean ceding significant amounts of territory to Russia.
That seems to be the American position. Let Russia keep what it has captured. Trump says it, and his defense minister, Pete Hegseth, parrots it.
We must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering.
Trump and Hegseth also rule out eventual membership in NATO for Ukraine, another one of Putin's demands. Ukraine and its allies say they must have a seat at the negotiating table and a central role in the talks. Europe is especially concerned about how a final peace treaty will affect it. And analyst Van Roo says the EU will be actively involved.
Europe's and their own national interests and national security is directly threatened by current developments and will therefore take a more active lead and role on this, the UK being one of them, but the Baltic states and the Nordic states very much as well.
And Trump? How does he see Ukraine's role in the peace process?
We would have Ukraine, we would have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too. A lot of people, a lot of forks in the a lot of forks in this game. I'll tell you what, this is a very interesting situation, but the Ukraine war has to end.
But so far, Trump has left Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky playing second fiddle. It seems Ukraine has been seated at the kids' table, while the big boys talk about a peace plan over dinner. Van Roo says that became evident when Trump called Putin first.
In the conversation, he did not say that Putin and Russia was a priority. And today, we trust these words. It is very important for us to keep U.S. support. But it is very important that I mentioned during our yesterday's conversation, we had already 3 conversations with President Trump. I don't treat this phone call with Putin as priority. The fact that Donald Trump first talked to Russia. But in any case, it is unpleasant.
She says that leaves Zelensky at a disadvantage.
So the fact that Trump called Putin first and not Zelensky means that Zelensky won't have had the opportunity to impress on Trump his key positions and views and perspectives on how any potential discussions of a ceasefire might unfold or unroll. And that's obviously significant because essentially it means that Ukraine is being cut out of the discussion, and Putin and Trump are speaking directly to each other without taking Ukraine's position into account.
For people on the street in Ukraine, there's disappointment. They feel snubbed by Trump, something Van Roo says is not surprising.
I could imagine that they might feel sold out by the US, and that so the past 24 hours have really been quite depressing for Ukrainian partners. But that's why, again, the European role and what really thinking through what else the European allies can do to support that is so important.
Since the beginning of the Russian invasion, the United States has been backing Ukraine. But with a new president in the White House, that support for Kyiv appears to be waning. And to many, once again, America is proving to its allies that it cannot be relied on. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
A Russian drone caused significant damage to the radiation containment shelter at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant overnight, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, Zelensky and the UN's energy watchdog both said that radiation levels remained normal after this incident, which came as top U.S., Ukrainian, and European officials gathered at the Munich Security Conference to discuss the war in Ukraine.
We had an attack on Chernobyl nuclear power plant tonight. The confinement over the 4th reactor was hit, which is very dangerous. 40 countries built it for a reason.
Chernobyl was the site of the world's worst civil nuclear catastrophe when one of its 4 reactors exploded in 1986, and that reactor is now enveloped by a protective shelter to contain the lingering radiation. The last working reactor at Chernobyl was shut down in 2000. Russia occupied the plant and the surrounding area for over a month during its push for the capital Kyiv at the beginning of the invasion. The Russian drone struck the shelter of the destroyed power unit at the plant, causing a fire that has been extinguished, Zelensky wrote on the Telegram app. According to initial assessments, the damage to the shelter is significant, he said. A devastating fire at a resort construction site in Busan, South Korea has claimed the lives of at least 6 individuals, according to local fire officials. The blaze erupted at around 10:20 a.m. local time Friday, leading to the evacuation of approximately 100 workers. Rescue teams utilized helicopters to airlift 14 individuals from the building's top rooftop. Despite the efforts of hundreds of firefighters, the fire was not fully extinguished until the afternoon. Authorities have reported that 6 people were found unconscious on the first floor near the suspected origin of the fire and were later pronounced dead at nearby hospitals. An additional 25 individuals sustained minor injuries. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. In response to the incident, South Korea's acting president, Choi Sang-mok, has ordered the deployment of all available resources to manage the situation. On Wednesday morning, a U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler jet crashed into San Diego Bay during an attempted landing at Naval Air Station North Island. The 2 crew members ejected safely before the aircraft submerged. They were rescued by a nearby charter fishing boat and subsequently transferred to a U.S. Customs and Border Protection vessel, then taken to UC San Diego Medical Center for evaluation. Both are reported to be in stable condition. The incident occurred around 10:15 a.m. local time during a go-around maneuver where the aircraft was landing and then taking off again. The cause of the crash is currently under investigation. Environmental and safety teams have been deployed to mitigate potential impacts, and the public is advised to avoid any debris that may wash ashore. Local authorities are coordinating with the military to control the debris field and contain any hazardous materials resulting from this incident. U.S. President Donald Trump has fired the first shots in what could become a global trade war. Trump ordered his economic team to develop plans for reciprocal tariffs on every country that taxes U.S. imports. Chris Fragata has more.
President Donald Trump's proposal ramps up the possibility of a global trade war with American friends and foes. He also wants to counteract non-tariff barriers such as vehicle safety rules that exclude U.S. autos and value-added taxes that increase their cost.
They can build a factory here, a plant or whatever it may be here, and that includes the medical, that includes cars, that includes chips and semiconductors. That includes everything. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs. They say this is going to be the thing that makes our country really prosperous again.
His main targets include China, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. But no country is immune. And Trump claims money collected from the tariffs will pay down the national debt.
And this is going to be what pays down to $36 trillion in debt and all the other things. And this is going to be, this is an amazing day. I think this is going to be a very big day and in a very positive way for our country.
Details are thin on how this will affect U.S. consumers and what it will do to the inflation rate. Instead, Trump continues to promote his dream that tariffs will not only bring in money, but create jobs.
We know that jobs are going to be produced at levels that we haven't seen before. We know that we think interest rates are going to ultimately be coming down because of things that happen, and they go hand in hand with the tariffs. But we think that the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately will go down.
The president admits prices could go up in the short term, but he insists companies will return to the United States and build factories.
We want it to be made. We want those companies to come to our country, in all due respect. You know, they took the business away. Taiwan took our chip business away. We had Intel, we had these great companies that did so well, and it was taken from us. And we want that business back. We want it back in the United States. And if they don't bring it back, we're not going to be very happy.
Wall Street reacted positively with U.S. stocks adding to the day's gains. Investors worry that tariffs will add to inflation and keep interest rates high.
At some point, the threat of a tariff and the forced negotiation will not end in the way that Donald Trump wants, where he will be forced to either to capitulate, which might change his ability to use that threat in the future, or actually follow through, some of which may have far unforeseen consequences and unexpected outcomes.
Kristen Fragata for NET25 World News.
India and the United States have agreed to initiate talks aimed at securing an early trade deal and resolving tariff disputes. Following discussions between President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House, India has committed to increasing its purchases of U.S. oil, gas, and military equipment, as well as addressing illegal immigration.
Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters. In 2017, my administration revived and reinvigorated the Quad security partnership. In our meeting today, the Prime Minister and I reaffirmed that strong cooperation among the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. And it's crucial, really, to maintaining peace and prosperity, tranquility, even in the Indo-Pacific.
Friends, today we have also set ourselves the target of more than doubling bilateral trade to attain $500 billion by 2030.
$500 billion तक पहुंचाने का।
Our teams will work on concluding very soon a mutually beneficial trade agreement in order to ensure India's energy security.
Trade agreement को
We will focus on trade in oil and gas.
भारत की ऊर्जा सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करने में हम ऑयल तथा गैस ट्रेड को बल।
The United States will increase military sales to India starting this year and will eventually provide F-35 fighter jets, according to Trump. Trump didn't provide a timeline, but foreign military sales, especially for cutting-edge technology like the stealthy F-35 jet, typically take years to work through. A Trump administration official told reporters earlier that U.S. and Indian officials were also moving forward with talks on a bilateral trade deal, and they hope to have a deal in place this year. Now, this development comes after President Trump criticized India's business environment and announced plans for reciprocal tariffs on countries imposing duties on U.S. imports. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Japan's Nissan and Honda ended talks to create an auto group worth $60 billion, pitching Nissan into greater uncertainty, although the automakers promised to continue to collaborate on electric vehicles. Francis McGuire reports.
Nissan and Honda ended talks to create an auto group worth $60 billion on Thursday. Sources have said the talks were complicated by growing differences. One major point of tension came from Honda's proposal to make Nissan a subsidiary. Honda CEO Toshihiro Mibe said he was deeply disappointed the two couldn't reach an agreement. Nissan CEO Makoto Uchida explained his thinking.
If Nissan wants to become a wholly owned subsidiary of Honda, from our perspective, it raises questions on how much autonomy would be preserved for us, and whether Nissan's potential could truly be maximised. We were not fully convinced on these issues, and as a result, we were unable to accept this proposal.
A merger would have created the world's fourth biggest automaker by vehicle sales. The Japanese auto giants had sought to join forces to better fight disruption in the industry, mainly from fast-rising Chinese electric vehicle makers. The country's car makers now also face the headwinds of possible tariffs in the U.S. The deal's collapse causes more uncertainty for Nissan, which hasn't fully recovered from years of crisis and management turmoil. The automaker also reported a sharp 78% drop in third-quarter profit Thursday and cut its full-year outlook for the third time. Nissan said it would speed up turnaround efforts announced 3 months ago. It said it plans to cut costs by $2.6 billion in fiscal 2026. It wants to build a leaner and more resilient business by reducing labour costs and restructuring its manufacturing base. Nissan and Honda first announced talks in December, but before that they had held separate discussions on a technology collaboration. On Thursday they said they would continue to collaborate on electric vehicles. Nissan is now open to working with new partners. Sources told Reuters Taiwan's Foxconn is seen as one candidate.
Australia's northwest is on high alert as Cyclone Zelia, a powerful Category 5 storm, approaches the Pilbara coast. The cyclone is expected to make landfall east of Port Hedland, bringing wind gusts of up to 290 kilometers per hour and heavy rainfall. In anticipation, major commodity ports in the Pilbara region, including Port Hedland, the world's largest iron ore export hub, have been closed since Wednesday.
We're ready to deal with the aftermath of the cyclone, which will pack 290 km/h winds and dump more than 500 millimetres of rain through the Pilbara. It is critical that impacted communities don't get complacent because the hazards won't ease once the cyclone has passed. Conditions after a cyclone can be just as dangerous as the cyclone itself.
On the eastern side of the tropical cyclone track, a dangerous storm surge is possible, which could cause flash flooding of coastal areas. However, the storm surge risk in line with the movement of the cyclone is greatly reduced for the Port Hedland area.
Residents of Port Hedland have been advised to seek shelter indoors, while non-essential staff have been relocated to safer areas. In other news tonight, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos is urging countries worldwide to work together to combat climate change. Speaking at the Climate Adaptability and Energy Forum during the World Government Summit in Dubai, she emphasized that climate change isn't just about numbers. It's about real people facing hardships they didn't cause.
Our country is among the most vulnerable nations to climate change. For 3 consecutive years, we have been ranked the most at-risk country in the world by the World Risk Index, the most at-risk country. So what does this mean in real terms? Just 4 months ago, between October and November 2024, our country endured an unprecedented 6 tropical cyclones in less than a month. By the way, for those of you who do not know why typhoons are named after women, it's because women are unpredictable and on a rampage. So, I'm going to cry. I met a fisherman from Batangas. Batangas is a province that's known for its beautiful beaches and mild weather. Historically, typhoons rarely hit this province. This fisherman, his name was Edwin Mendoza, saw a nearby house collapsing because of the raging river. And so he rushed over to save the people inside. They were submerged in water, they couldn't swim, so he rushed there to save them. He managed to rescue them, but when he returned home, he found his whole house buried in mud. His entire family was lost in the landslide. That's him over there. I met him a week after this incident. I guess what I'm trying to say, apart from all the drama, is that climate change is not just about statistics. It has a human face, a face that belongs to millions of families suffering the consequences. Our country is deeply committed to climate change. We have also launched, my husband has also launched, a national adaptation plan to strengthen the resilience of our communities, particularly in infrastructure and energy. The unfortunate truth, however, is that no country can solve this crisis alone. We need global solidarity. Let's not wait for another crisis to force us into action. The time to act is now.
And breaking medical news tonight, scientists have created microscopic robots that could revolutionize cancer treatment. These tiny machines, called bioresorbable acoustic microrobots, or BANs, can navigate through the body and deliver medications exactly where they're needed. Now, when tested on mice with bladder cancer, these micro-robots prove significantly more effective than traditional drug delivery methods, shrinking tumors more effectively over a 3-week treatment period. Take a look.
Could these tiny robots make drug delivery more efficient? Scientists from the California Institute of Technology have developed a minuscule robot designed for targeted drug delivery, according to a recent paper in Science Robotics. The micro-robots, which are smaller than the width of a human hair, are capable of operating in bodily fluids, and they're controlled to deliver the medicine exactly where it's needed in the human body. Wei Gao is a professor of medical engineering at Caltech.
Micro-nanorobot has a high potential to navigate through the hard-to-reach environment of the human body for precision surgery or drug delivery.
The robots use magnetic nanoparticles, allowing precise control of their movement using an external magnetic field. Researchers are able to direct them to specific locations and trigger the release of the drug once they reach their target. Combined with advanced ultrasound imaging, the robots can be tracked and guided in real time. Once they've done their job, they can be absorbed by the body without causing harm.
So in this work, we presented this bioresorbable hydrogel microrobot. We can actually fabricate this microrobot using two-photon polymerization. It's scalable manufacturing. And this microrobot, through surface modification and structure design, they can display very efficient propulsion in complex environment, including human blood, urine, GI fluid.
The team tested the microrobots on mice with bladder tumors and found they shrunk the tumors more effectively than the same medicine delivered without the robots.
Over a 21-day treatment period, we see a substantial decrease in tumor size in the mice while treated with the microrobot.
Moving forward, the team plans to explore more medical applications with the goal of conducting clinical trials in humans.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend. Good night.